Hi, it's The Herd. Stamps.com has been a sponsor of my show for years. More than that, I've been using Stamps.com for ages. You got a busy schedule. You don't have time to go to the post office and deal with their limited hours. We're all looking for more time to get things done. I know I am. I can get all my mailing, all my shipping done from the desk at my work, or yours could be at home. Unlike the post office, Stamps.com never closes. Print postage for letters or packages, always at your convenience. No more dealing with traffic, waiting in long lines, or circling the post office. What a great product for small businesses. With Stamps.com, you're going to save time and money, which will help you grow your business. It's a no-brainer. Right now, get a special offer only if you use the code HERD. A 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Don't wait. Stamps.com. Click the mic, type in HERD. For a 4-week trial plus postage and, this is great, a digital scale. Stamps.com code HERD. That's HERD.
This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Christine Leahy is joining me on a beautiful Wednesday when we have all sorts of stuff, including Paulie Malignaggi, the sparring partner of Conor McGregor, who is ticked off, is joining us, I'm told, in about 35 minutes.
He's ticked off about what exactly? The video still being leaked?
Yeah, he doesn't like that video. He thinks he was made to look like a fool. It was edited to make him look weak and Conor great, which he may be right. We will find out the answers, though, in 35 minutes. I want to talk about something right now that probably, well, it's going to affect me before it affects Christine. It will eventually maybe, but it's going to affect me here in about 8 years, and it's sad.
Okay.
When you're 20 or you're 30, your bosses, your executives, the decision makers at your workplace, they're much more accepting of your quirkiness, let's say. Sometimes it's even celebrated. If you're really intense in your 20s, hey, Charlotte is passionate. Justin is all in. That kid is fiery. Your forgetfulness in your 20s or 30s. Hey, come on, man. He's going 100 miles an hour. I love kids like that. Of course, he forgot his car keys. Man, that kid, every time he comes into work, he's just going. What do you expect? Come to work hungover in your 20s. Hey, it's a badge of honor. Tim works hard, plays hard. You know what I mean? You know what we used to be like. Work hard, play hard. That guy, I love him. And then as you age, those all become deficiencies. Bob isn't intense. Bob's now 64 and he's got a temper. Bob doesn't work well with others. His forgetfulness, Bob's losing a step. He's hungover. Bob may have a problem. He could be an alcoholic. That's the way it works. Eccentric in your 20s becomes sad and crazy in your 60s. Unique at 29 becomes out of touch at 59. I tell my wife this all the time. I'm a little different, not proud of all of it, just kind of weird. I said my companies have celebrated it so far, but we better save our money because at 60, Colin's lost it. He's gone cuckoo. No, I've been cuckoo since I was 9, but it'll be judged differently when you hit certain ages. Now, it depends on your career in certain ages, but what happens as you age, and this is happening to Tom Brady, he is entering a very unforgiving place. And I like to call it the whisper tunnel. People don't tell you to your face, and they don't say it out loud. They whisper things about you. And that's what happens as a 60-year-old broadcaster and a 40-year-old quarterback. Tom Brady has entered the whisper tunnel. His uniqueness, his mistakes will be judged differently. Now, when Tom's great, he'll still be judged as, come on, the GOAT. But when Tom has a bad second half or a bad first half like the Super Bowl, he was in the whisper tunnel. Tom is up. He just can't avoid the rush like he used to. When Tom has a bad second half this year, He's wearing down. I mean, you can just see it. Although he had all sorts of bad halves in his late 20s and early 30s. This is what happened to Clint Eastwood at the Republican convention. In a moment, the independent thinker became weird, out of touch. Mistakes are viewed as you age, depending on the age and your profession, through the prism only of age. And so I'm listening to radio today, and all the shows as I'm driving in are talking about Garoppolo and Tom Brady and what's going to happen. Nothing's really going to happen that you hear this year. Tom will be in the whisper tunnel. But the whisper tunnel eventually becomes audible when they find a replacement they think is ready. You're the 68-year-old attorney in the law firm. 29-year-old from Harvard walks in. The whispers, Bob is old, become at lunch when Bob's not there. Bob's old. I like the young kid. That's when you'll know Brady is in trouble. Because now, Brady right now, and I sensed this last year, entered the whisper tunnel, and he's going to be in the whisper tunnel this year. When the whispers become audible with a young, athletic, handsome, virile Jimmy Garoppolo, and there'll be a quote in the next year, then you know Tom's in trouble. You're allowed flaws and quirkiness in your 20s, 30s. Then you go into the whisper tunnel, and then the whispers become audible. They are not yet for Tom Brady. The first time you hear it, a quote, an anonymous source on Garoppolo, that officially is the beginning of the end. All right, I want to talk about something. Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor is August 26th. And so yesterday I'm on Speak for Yourself, and we brought in a guy. I hadn't seen him in 30 years. We remembered each other but didn't know each other, John Horn. When I was in Vegas out of college, John Horn was in the Mike Tyson group. And he was kind of a controversial figure, kind of strong-willed guy. The media and him kind of battled. I didn't know him, never met him, but I remember him being in the Tyson camp. I don't remember a lot of particulars. He had kind of a feisty relationship at times with the media. So we stopped by the show yesterday. I'm like, oh, my God, John, I haven't seen you in years. Do you remember me? And he goes, I never met you, but you were on local TV in Vegas covering Tyson all the time. And it was neat. It was like, wow, I haven't seen you. We sat down and talked. And he started talking about Conor McGregor. Now, John is John has dealt with Mike Tyson. He was with Tyson as he rose, as he starred, and as he sank. John was through all of it. He saw all of it. And some of the stuff he told me yesterday, I'm not going to share. It was off the record, but it was fascinating stuff. But we started talking about Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. And he talked about what McGregor doesn't have to win the fight. He just sort of needs to be viable and something could happen. Let me take you back to John Horn yesterday on Speak for Yourself talking about McGregor.
This man you're talking about right here, just on his grit, his cockiness, his confidence alone, and it only has to be in his mind. It doesn't have to be in my mind. It doesn't have to be in yours. He's a capable professional fighter who has no idea what we're talking about. Floyd's going to walk through him. He's really he don't understand what planet we're living on right now. It's going to take Floyd 3 or 4 rounds to make this man start to believe, okay, maybe he's better than I thought he was.
The point being, he thinks McGregor's going to do pretty well. He does not think McGregor's going to win, but he thinks he's going to represent himself in very strong fashion. And here's the interesting thing. The reason the UFC has grown so quickly is strong management. It's why most companies grow quickly. Amazon, Facebook, companies that grow quickly, they have good management. And in the UFC, fighters don't control the sport. But the problem with strong management generally equals less pay, less leverage for the star employee. Dana White controls all fights and all purses in the UFC. Floyd Mayweather is his own promoter. He doesn't have to give 40, 50, or whatever percent it is to the boss and the system. Is that the UFC is about the system and the brand and the business, like the NFL. Boxing's about the star fighter, like the NBA. Who makes more money? The question to me is, if McGregor comes out and is at least viable. Loses in 12 rounds, but absolutely lands punches and is awkward as a lefty and a UFC fighter, that he does make Mayweather pause and at times look uncomfortable. Would he just leave the UFC? Would they lose their top drawing card? Because boxing can pay you more, and boxing is less controlling. And boxing, like the NBA, is about the fighter, not the brand. This is why actors love Netflix and Amazon. More control, more money, take out the middleman. I'm watching Ozark with Jason Bateman. He can star, he can direct, he can write, he can do it all. That's why actors like Netflix and Amazon. McGregor doesn't need to win. Mayweather needs to win. McGregor needs to have a decent account of himself. Land a few punches. Make Floyd occasionally uncomfortable. Because Floyd is a great boxer. McGregor's a great superstar. And there are different rules for those two. And so what I think's compelling in this fight is I do not expect McGregor to win the fight or even a round. But if he is interesting and compelling and gives a decent representation and makes Floyd a little uncomfortable, could UFC lose their hands-down biggest star to boxing? Good to have you in on a Wednesday. Paulie Malignaggi will join us in about 20 minutes, and he's going to account for himself and the video and what was real and what was edited. He's apparently not very happy. We have a very good day today. I saw something else that came across my desk this morning, and you know, we argue not even argue. We debate sometimes what valuable means. I think there are two people in sports that are so valuable, like beyond Michael Jordan valuable, beyond Tom Brady valuable, maybe beyond Nick Saban valuable. And I'll tell you who those two are based on a comment I read this morning. Welcome back. Heard Paulie Malignaggi, 10 minutes, live from Brooklyn on the video release that he's not happy with in the sparring with Conor McGregor. By the way, I want to touch on something I touched on yesterday. I was lamenting, Christine, what drives me nuts now. Nobody reads the article. They just read the headline. People no longer want to digest and take time to actually read content. They just see the headline and they think, I can't believe it. Half the time, the headline writer, he didn't write the story.
Right.
He's just trying to,
half the time.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, probably most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I said something about Matt Ryan yesterday. Nobody actually wanted to listen to what I said. You're saying that Andy Dalton's better than Matt Ryan. It's not what I said. Read the article. What I said is Matt Ryan is better than Andy Dalton, but he's closer to Andy Dalton than he is to Aaron Rodgers. And the media suddenly, after this year, wants to put him in the Aaron Rodgers class. He ain't close. He is closer to Andy Dalton than he is to Aaron Rodgers. Now, he's better than Andy Dalton, as I said yesterday. I judge people based on their body of work. Every talk show host has had a great segment, and every one of them's had a bad segment. Give me your next 8 years. I don't judge people on a good day or a bad day. That's what the media does. Oh, somebody said this, they're terrible. Somebody did this, they're great. No, those are 2 segments. They do 17 segments a day. Let me see 10 years of segments. Anybody in this business is good on a Monday after the football games. How are you in August 11th on a Wednesday? That's good. I don't judge on highs and lows. What's your body of work? If you take Matt Ryan's worst year out, his first year, he's a baby, he's a kid, he's a rookie. I'm not going to punish him for that. And if you take out last year where he had a perfect team and the perfect coordinator, and you look at his stats, 26 TDs, 14 picks, 91 passer rating, it's about 6% better than Andy Dalton. It ain't close to Aaron Rodgers. So I'll stand by it again. Read the story. Matt Ryan's better than Andy, but he's closer to Andy than he is to Aaron Rodgers, who he's now being compared to. Secondly, let me shift gears to something I saw yesterday. It was very harmless. It was not mean-spirited by any manner. Richard Jefferson played for the Cavs, and he was sort of making fun of a teammate, Darren Williams, and how bad he was defensively. And he was talking about when he came in the game, the Warriors' eyes lit up. I do not think it was mean-spirited. Intent means something. But it shows a continuing off season where things were not perfect for Cleveland. And I have argued this for years. there's a real misunderstanding on what valuable means. Valuable doesn't mean best. Okay, if Brady leaves New England, I don't think Tom Brady's the most valuable guy in the NFL. I think Aaron Rodgers is far more valuable to the Packers than Tom Brady is to New England. If Brady leaves New England, they got Belichick and Garoppolo and Kraft. They're still viable. If Steph leaves Golden State, they've got Durant, Draymond, and Clay. They're still good. Michael Jordan left the Bulls, 57 wins to 55. Alabama's won national titles without Nick Saban. It's a great job. He's great. He's not the most valuable coach. Pujols left the Cardinals. They won a World Series, or they went to the World Series. They made the World Series next year. A-Rod left the Mariners. They won 116 games the next year. Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City. They still made the playoffs. Joe Montana left the 49ers. They were still really good. Wayne Gretzky was great, but he never won it with the Kings, and the Edmonton Oilers, 2 years later without Gretzky, won the Stanley Cup. There is a difference between great and valuable. And in my opinion, the two most valuable players in professional sports in America are Andrew Luck and LeBron James. Kawhi is more valuable than LeBron. If Kawhi Leonard left tomorrow, first of all, they'd get a good player for him. They still have a great head coach, a great owner, and an unbelievable scouting department. It's a pretty good free agent destination. They'd be fine. They would be fine. When I look at this offseason for the Cavs, remember the last time LeBron left Cleveland? They went from 61-21, and the next year they were 19-63. I honestly think if LeBron left, they may be worse. That's what I say about Andrew Luck. If Cam Newton left, they still in Carolina have a great owner, a really good head coach, and a terrific defensive roster. Cam's good. He's not that valuable. Okay, Tom Brady is great, but he's not that valuable. Aaron Rodgers walks out of the door in Green Bay. They may have big problems, and I really like their head coach. But, man, when I look at this offseason for Cleveland and Richard Jefferson taking little non-mean-spirited shots at Darren Williams and Kyrie and LeBron, it just speaks to a word we're overwhelmingly confused by. Valuable. I mean, Andrew Luck's got a quirky owner, had the worst GM, a defensive-minded head coach. If he doesn't play this year, that's maybe a 2-14 team. It really is. It's a 2-14 team. Brady leaves New England. That's a 9-10 win team in that, a 9-10 win team in that division. The Jets are awful. The Bills now are totally rebuilding, and the Dolphins don't have Tannehill. You can still argue they'd win 12 games. So again, great and valuable, two different things. Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
The Knicks are not interested in trading Kristaps Porzingis for Kyrie Irving, which is a problem for the Cavs because, according to reports, they are operating under the impression that LeBron will leave after this year, and so they want to rebuild around a younger star, especially if Kyrie Irving is not there. So they had their eyes set on Kristaps Porzingis. So if the Knicks don't want to do that, not good for the Cavs.
Yeah, I think Kyrie and Porzingis have some similarities. Clearly on their own, they're not going to carry a team to greatness. They're both really good.
Okay.
And both don't love their current organization, and both have a history of a little bit of an alarming injury trend. I think they're both A players, A- players. Sometimes Kyrie can be A+ in nights. But I think it would, like if I swapped Kyrie for Porzingis, that to me would be just, if teams did it, they wouldn't do it. I think Porzingis and Kyrie are very similar.
You think that would be an equal trade?
I do.
No.
I really do.
I completely disagree.
I think Porzingis playing with LeBron's probably a 24.5 point.
Okay, but Kyrie and Kristaps Porzingis are not the same player and an equal trade, but I do understand why the Knicks wouldn't want to do that, especially if they don't think Kyrie will stay, which he probably wouldn't want to stay with the Knicks. Especially when there's reports coming out, too, that he's saying that he would sign an extension with the Spurs if he were to be traded there.
So you think if Porzingis went to Cleveland with Love, Porzingis, LeBron, you think they would be significantly worse of a team?
No, I think that not significantly worse. I think Kyrie's a better player than Kristaps Porzingis, and I think on like an open trade market, they're not the same player. But the Cavs already have a great team, so add Kristaps and getting rid of Kyrie, it wouldn't make a huge difference, but a little one.
All right.
Showtime has declared war on anyone who wants to try to pirate the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight, which I just find very interesting because so many people watch these fights on streaming websites or on Periscope or Instagram Live where you don't have to pay for it. So now Showtime is saying they're going to go heavy after these places and even have taken preemptive measures with their legal teams to send notices out to different sites to prevent it from happening. I totally understand it. I don't think it's possible. I think there's definitely going to be sites that you can stream. People are going to Instagram Live. They're going to Periscope. It's going to happen.
Well, I mean, gosh, look at this. You even see now, like, stuff leaks from HBO and, like, series will leak. And, I mean, there's just every company's got a disgruntled employee. Every company's got somebody that will give you a code or a...
Yeah, it just... And the websites are just so... You can get any show you want if you know how to get the right website. And there's enough smart, techie kind of people that can figure it out. I'll be honest, I've asked my brother on occasion. Like when I was in Europe, I needed a link to watch a show, and he found it for me. So you can do it.
How about that? That's useful to know down the road there.
HBO Spain just played the next Game of Thrones by accident, so now that's on the internet.
They did.
Oh, no, I don't want to see. You should see, though. It's gotten really good.
I started watching Ozark last night.
The dragons are starting to be used in Game of Thrones, so it's really good now.
Oh, I love dragons.
And we might have found out who's a new king. It's really great.
I cannot wait for that.
And finally, Paulie Malignaggi is saying that if Conor McGregor can hang around with Floyd Mayweather and at least look good, he would consider a fight, but he has to wait and see how this all looks. And he said that he's even thought about St. Patrick's Day as a potential day to fight.
Fight in Dublin.
And I love this because he's saying, I'm going to beat Conor McGregor on his day, on St. Patrick's Day for Ireland. And that's how confident he is. I actually think I would be more interested in watching that fight than I am in the Floyd fight.
No, I think Floyd McGregor is going to be boring. But I'd like... just because I think their styles are so weird that I think they're going to feel each other out for 4 rounds. We'll ask Paulie what he thinks.
Did you see Floyd was on Jimmy Kimmel, I believe, last night, and he was talking about how he was changing up his style so that the fans would get a better show. Like he's going to let Conor hang around.
Oh, really?
That's what he was saying.
Oh, boy. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe. And then you also hear him say a lot of things like, oh, he's going to land a lot of punches and I'm not in great shape. And I honestly believe that's to sell tickets and to get people to watch. So you don't know what to believe until the fight actually happens.
Totally agree there, Christine. Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
He's not only a boxer and not only a sparring partner was with Conor, he's a Showtime boxing analyst. He's joining us live right now in Brooklyn via the Coward Global Satellite Network. Paulie Malignaggi is joining us from his buddy's gym, which I got to look at it about 5 minutes ago, boy, does it look like a boxing gym. That is great. Give your buddy right now, give your buddy a shout out on our show. What's his name and where's the gym?
Yeah. My buddy's Paul Gassi, and it's a makeshift gym in his garage. You know, we kind of come here and just work out, you know, and just do stuff. And it's very boxing oriented. You know, it wouldn't be a gym that I hung out with and trained if it wasn't boxing oriented.
All right, just don't give away the address. We don't want to have people rushing a Brooklyn garage. Okay,
No.
Let's start with this. I want to go to the sparring session, and you were unhappy with the video. Here's something that I noticed, Paulie. There was a referee in the ring during the sparring section. I've never seen that. Why was he there?
Well, Colin, you know, I think Conor McGregor wants to get used to boxing rules, and so he hired a retired Hall of Fame referee in Joe Cortez to referee all the sparring sessions. So I think he wanted to kind of get used to the way things are in boxing, because, you know, rules are different in mixed martial arts than they are in boxing, and he wanted to know what he's doing wrong, and he wanted to know what he's doing right and whatnot. So in every single sparring session he had, Joe Cortez was there. But I don't know. Conor was a little weird. He didn't just want him for the actual sparring. He wanted him for the stare downs, the instructions. I found it a little bit tacky at times. But as far as Cortez actually refereeing, that's the reason he was there for.
Okay, you're a natural boxer. Conor's a UFC guy who can do a little boxing. He's a lefty. His style is obviously quirky. Do you believe that his quirkiness, he's a little stronger, I think, perhaps, than Mayweather. Could it create problems for Floyd at all?
Listen, I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at it for style-wise, it's not a matchup. Style-wise, Conor can't match Floyd at all, But I think what you want to really look at for this matchup is the intensity. Conor's a younger guy. He's bringing that youthful intensity, and the intensity Conor brings can sometimes be a little bit of a change of pace. You got to understand, Floyd's fought some great fighters. He's beaten some great fighters, but all of them, to a degree, have had a little bit of respect for Floyd because they know how good he is and and what he can do. Conor is coming in a little bit as a rookie. Call it ignorance is bliss in a way, but in a way, it also makes it more exciting because he's not really coming with that kind of respect for him, So he's bringing if you're trying to match skills and styles, it's not a matchup. I mean, if you're thinking about that, then he's going to get his ass kicked. But it's not about that. It's also about the intensity and your game face. And from that degree, you see Floyd last night doing Jimmy Kimmel. You see Floyd out and about in the All Access shows that they're previewing the fights. I'm sure Floyd is training. Don't get me wrong. Floyd doesn't go to training camp without training. But, the intensity and the youthful intensity at that obviously is a different dimension that McGregor brings.
Okay, now you're a sparring partner, so your job is not to beat Conor. But when you hit him, does Conor have the chin? Mm-hmm. If Conor decides my only way to win this is to go right after Floyd and I'm going to take some shots, does Conor have a good chin?
Conor's got a decent chin. I mean, we're all wearing headgear and bigger gloves. Conor's got a decent chin, But you mentioned the referee. One thing Conor has to understand, and you see that in that little clip that they sent out, it wasn't so much that he's landing shots because most of the shots are missing. If anything, they've shot themselves in the foot because all the dirty stuff he does that the referee will actually warn him for. In that particular sparring session, there's no judges, but he lost 2 points away from that particular sparring session for fouls, for rabbit punching and hitting behind the head and pushing the head down. So where he really has to learn is not so much to take the shot or not take the shot because you want to try not to get hit. What he really has to learn is to try to keep it within the rules because he's a little bit confused as to what he's doing in there. He's a little bit confused, especially on the inside. As you can see in that tape, he's trying to grab and push the head down. Inside fighting in boxing is very different than inside fighting than in mixed martial arts. You can't grab. You actually have to know what you're doing on the inside.
John Horn is Mike Tyson's former manager. And he said yesterday, when Paulie got mad, it's quite possible that he went into these sparring sessions and Conor doesn't really understand the culture of sparring partners, and maybe Paulie's role wasn't well defined. You had 2 sparring sessions with Conor. Was there confusion? Did you understand your role? Did he understand his entirely?
Yeah, I understand the role. Listen, I've been in a lot of training camps. I was an ex-world champion. A lot of sparring is very violent, so I don't mind the intensity of the sparring. That's never a problem. The problem is video editing and whatnot. If you're doing that good, why are you trying to prove to the world how good you are? Just put the videos out. Don't edit them. Leave it concurrently running 20, 30 seconds in a row. If you have the advantage, if you're saying you have the advantage for 12 rounds straight, as they're saying, leave 20 or 30 seconds running concurrently. Don't have to edit in from one round to the other and try to mix in little highlights. Just do it the right way. I feel like it's almost, I've mentioned it in this adjective, it's almost adorable. It's almost cute where, he's trying so hard to convince the public, I can do this, I belong in this fight. You don't have to try so hard, little buddy. I want to give him a hug and tell him it's going to be all right. But it's really not going to be all right if he keeps doing this. Like, he's got to focus on the fight. He's got to stop trying to convince everybody that he can do it and show everybody he can do it on fight night. Because editing videos and mixing and matching footage is not what you're going to be able to do in a live fight against Floyd Mayweather. So, like I said, I think he needs a hug. But at the end of the day, he needs some strong advice. And the yes men in his corner need to stop being cheerleaders and being trained, and they need to start being trainers.
He did land a left with you, but I said it looked like you were mimicking Floyd with a shoulder roll. Was that a legit punch, or were you just trying to mimic Floyd and leave yourself vulnerable?
Well, no, in some spots I'm trying to mimic the looks Floyd gives, and then in some spots I'm boxing. In that particular shot that he landed, it was actually the last round. It was 12 rounds. We had boxed 12 rounds. So he took a clip from round 12 where I was actually tired. I wasn't in 12-round shape. I mean, I've never heard of a sparring partner doing 12 rounds, but I'm not a complainer, so I did it. So the last couple of rounds, I had fully admitted he had gotten the advantage. For the first 10, he probably didn't have the advantage, though. But so that clip was taken from round 12, and then it was mixed in from a round earlier, and to try to make it look like that was the shot that did the initial damage, because the shot where I went down, there was no shots that landed. So the sequence where I went down, it was a lot of missing and slipping and pushing down. So I think that left hand that landed, they needed to tie that clip into the other clip so they make it look like there was a shot that landed. But it was a decent shot, don't get me wrong. You're in sparring. You can't play in the mud without getting dirty. If you're sparring in the ring, especially for 36 minutes, some shots are going to land from both sides. At day's end, it was a decent shot. I do think Conor has to learn to turn punches over, but more so than that, I think he needs to learn how to keep it clean. He's going to get himself disqualified if he keeps punching behind the head and pushing the head down. He needs to understand that inside fighting in boxing is different than inside fighting in mixed martial arts. And the rabbit punches are fouls in both sports, so he already knows that as it is. Christine mentioned this. She was watching Kimmel or something last night, and Floyd's like going around saying, hey, I'm going to change my style. And I'm like, that's a bunch of hooey. We don't believe that because we don't think Floyd cares about anybody but Floyd. When you hear that Floyd's going to mix it up with Conor, is that just selling tickets to you? To some people, it might be selling tickets. Here's how I look at it. I've seen many Floyd Mayweather fights. I followed Floyd throughout his career. Floyd will give you pockets of aggression if he doesn't respect your style. Now, if he has a guy who he respects his style, Canelo Alvarez, or Manny Pacquiao, guys that he feels like, oh, man, you know what, I got to be on my back foot with this guy and be really alert because he can hurt me, then Floyd will fight a defensive fight, counterpunching, use the skill set part of boxing. But there has been fights in Floyd Mayweather's career where he knows he can break you. He starts to realize he doesn't have to respect your style, your power. Even if you have power, you have to know how to land it. And if at a certain point Floyd comes to the realization that there's nothing to respect, even if you can punch. I mean, he was starting to walk down Victor Ortiz. Victor Ortiz, to me, is a bigger puncher than Conor McGregor. He was starting to walk him down in the last round where they fought, So he started to walk down Zab Judah, another good fighter, another good southpaw. So there comes a point in Floyd Mayweather, in a Floyd Mayweather fight where he believes that if he doesn't have to respect your game, if he doesn't have to respect your boxing ability, he will start to walk you down. And his fights have proven this. But, of course, it's all going to depend on what Conor brings to the table. If Conor enforces some respect, Floyd will take a defensive approach. So I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibilities. As a matter of fact, Conor's never been a guy who's been a boxer for a long time. So I think he has to enforce the respectability through his intensity because he's not going to do it through his skill set.
Do you think Conor will at least be respectable? And if he is, would you fight him after that?
I don't know. Like I said, I think if you look at skill for skill, this guy doesn't even know how to shadow box. So I think he has to bring something different to the table. He's been trained in a little bit of a different way. I personally didn't agree with what they were doing in the gym, but it's not up to me to say that. On Fight Night, we'll see if he looks like a genius or if he looks like an idiot. If I had to judge on skill for skill, this is a wash. This fight is a mismatch. But I look at the intensity level of a youthful guy, and I look at the fact that I still think Floyd Mayweather, although he trains, is still underestimating him a little bit. Like, why are you doing Jimmy Kimmel a week and a half out of the fight? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you traveling to LA when you're supposed to be in training camp? Why are you moving around this much? You got to get your game face on because at the end of the day, you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have your game face on, somebody's intensity can devour you, even if you are better than that person. So it's important to have the psychological approach be correct as well as the physical approach, and we'll find out if Floyd has that next week.
And would you fight him if he's at least respectable? Would you fight him?
If he's respectable, yeah, of course I will fight him. That's not a problem at all. I think at the end of the day, when two guys don't like each other, especially him, he had the power to not speak about me at all, not put me in the media, and he had the power to make this go away. He's the guy that everybody's paying attention to right now. Instead, he keeps putting up pictures of me on his Instagram. He keeps putting up videos he's editing up on social media and whatnot. So in a way, I think subtly he's trying to keep me relevant in all this. I wasn't supposed to be relevant in all this. I was just one of the commentators. I'm an ex-retired fighter. But at the end of the day, he's brought this up. I'm obviously going to speak about what really happened because you can only edit so much. You have 36 minutes of running video, and you can't even put together a 20-second straight concurrently running clip of you dominating the action. And you're going to try to say you dominated 12 rounds. I think it's a little funny. I think it's a little tacky. But like I said, I also think it's a little bit cute because he's trying so hard. He's like the little engine that could. He's demanding attention. Like he really wants to convince everybody that he can do this. If he looks decent, yeah, I'll get in there and kick his ass. But if not, then Floyd will do it next week, and I don't think anybody will want to watch him box again. It's really up to him. Like I said, the thing he has going for him is the intensity. I think that's what you really have to look at when you look at Conor McGregor, because for skill, it's even established professional fighters don't match Floyd Mayweather's skill. But the intensity of a 40-year-old usually doesn't match the intensity of a 29-year-old, and that's where you have a difference here.
Why do you think he's trying to keep you relevant?
Yeah, why do you think he's trying to keep you relevant?
I think subtly he wants to box again after this. I really do. He's got some very tough mandatory fights coming up in the UFC if he goes back to the UFC. Mixed martial arts is not federally regulated the way they can break up the money, so he can make more money boxing because there's federal regulations in boxing to where they can't keep all the money. In the UFC, Dana White can keep almost all the money. He can pay you what he wants to pay you, and you can't even take him to court because there's no rules regulating that sport. In boxing, if a promoter is keeping all the money, you can take him to court and fight him on it. You know what I'm saying? So there's more federal regulations in boxing. He can keep more of the money he generates in boxing than he can in the UFC. And the UFC, not only would he have to make less money, he's having pretty tough fights coming up. Like that guy Khabib and that guy Ferguson, they're not playing around. They're waiting for McGregor to come back very, very hungry. There's even guys like Jose Aldo that want a rematch. Nate Diaz wants a third fight. I don't think Conor is really looking forward to going back to seeing those guys. So I think he can make more money boxing, and he's probably looking for an opponent that he can kind of vibe with and match up with. And you don't want to put him in with a prime world champion because you say like an Errol Spence. Errol Spence would put Conor in a hospital for a couple of weeks. You know what I'm saying? So you need to kind of vibe. You need to kind of match up correctly. I'm an ex-world champion. I have a name, but maybe I'm a little bit past my prime. It's kind of what It's kind of what he's trying to do with Floyd Mayweather as well. We'll see how it works out. But he's got to look at least respectable next week. Otherwise, it's all for nothing.
Paulie Malignaggi, good talking to you, man. It's I enjoyed all your commentary here. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, that was good. That's why he's a commentator on the air.
He sounds like an amazing commentator. And you know what? He came across so honest, very humble. The fact that even at the end there, he was willing to say, I'm past my prime. That's probably why he wants to match up. It makes me believe everything that he said.
Yeah, I agree. Back in a second, the herd. Brought to you by J.C. Penney. Guys, get to J.C. Penney today. 514 straight fit under $40. 511 slim fit $42. Get your pennies worth. J.C. Penney. Big sales and stuff there. That was an interesting interview. Driving in this morning. I mean, it's mid-August, and I'm thinking about football, and it's. I've said this about McGregor Mayweather. I don't think the fight's going to be particularly good, but I think it's interesting. I'm interested to see how the styles match up. And I was thinking about this year in the NFL. Like, what are the 3 or 4 stories I really, really am interested to see? And I think the number one thing in the NFL I'm really interested to see is, listen, Dak and Dallas and Ezekiel. Like, can the Cowboys do it again? Was it a fluke? Was it catching everybody off guard? Is Dak going to have a sophomore slump? I think the Cowboys are the most interesting story in the NFL. Their schedule's tough. Ezekiel's gone. They've got suspensions. Their secondary's now all kids. Dak was great as a rookie. Can he be great as a second-year player? I think the Cowboys are easily the most captivating story of the football season. And then after that, there's 2 or 3 that interest me, and I was surprised how much I care about one of them. I also think Cam Newton bounce back. He was awful last year, and you can blame anybody you want. Aaron Rodgers has never had a year like that, and he hasn't always had support, and Brady's never had a year like that, and Elway never had a year like that. I mean, Cam was awful, right? And completion percentage, mechanics, wins is bad. Can he bounce back? I think Tom Brady's last year is an interesting story. Are we going to see it 40 years old? He gets dinged. Does he drop off? So the Dak Cowboys is 1. Then Brady and Cam's kind of 2 and 3. You know what I'm really interested in? And I don't even know why, because I generally couldn't give a rip about stuff like this. I really want to hear Tony Romo with Jim Nantz. I don't know why I'm interested. I don't really care. Not that I don't care about announcers, but it's not. I generally watch games for games. I don't watch them for like announcers. That's not to say that if somebody's on, like Collinsworth, Michaels, Buck, Aikman, there's no question. Like, I think they make the game better, right? They're great. But I am fascinated to hear Tony Romo. Am I nuts on that, Goulet? I don't know why I care about that. I don't know why that's an interesting. That is never interesting to me.
You're going to watch an entire bad preseason game just to hear him?
I just want to hear how Tony Romo does.
Well, you like football and broadcasting, so it does kind of make sense for you.
But I generally don't care about, I like when I turn on a game and you have, Brent Musburger felt big. When I was a kid, Keith Jackson doing college football, the game felt bigger. We were lucky out here in the West Coast. Keith Jackson did a lot of Pac-12 games because he lived in Thousand Oaks and BC, Vancouver. So he did a lot of West Coast games. And the games, it could be Arizona State, Washington State, but if Keith was doing it, it felt big. Joe Buck feels big. Nance feels big. Collinsworth. I saw where Mike Tirico is going to do Notre Dame games. Mike Tirico will make Notre Dame games feel even bigger. Mike feels big. And I'm just kind of fascinated to hear Tony Romo. And I'm not into it, but I really am. I think it's really hard. People, listen, I've said this before. I just talk, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people can talk. And I think, and when you do play-by-play, especially if you're a veteran, you've been doing it for 25, 30 years, there's a certain system to doing it, following the play, certain mechanics that just come naturally to you, like driving to work for 20 years the same route. The hardest thing I think to do in broadcasting, and I'm dead serious, is football analyst. Because you've got to talk in 8-second bites. Now there's no huddles. You have 8-second bites, and over the course of a game, you have 230. And if you have two bad ones, it's all anybody will talk about. Phil Simms was fine. About once, twice a game, Phil Simms would say something, and you'd be like, that's a head scratcher. People just killed him for it. By and large, Phil Simms said what you'd say. And I would say if I sat down with you for 3.5 hours and every 15 seconds I pointed to you and said, go 8 seconds, go 8 seconds, you would sound like an idiot 75% of the time. These football analysts, man, they got to be great for 3 hours in 8-second clips 250 times. And if they're bad in 2 of them, the blogosphere eats them apart. So I'm really interested to see how Tony Romo does. My guess is he's okay. Not great, not terrible. He's better than average, but okay. It's the Herd. This is the Herd. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, live in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Christine Leahy is joining me on a Wednesday. Paulie Malignaggi, listen to the podcast, was amazing last hour. He was amazing last hour on the Conor McGregor sparring issue and the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight. I understand sometimes people write articles, and it's probably more interesting when writers and broadcasters say, this guy's overrated, this guy's underrated, that guy's underappreciated. I'm seeing a narrative now in college football. I saw another article today. Lamar Jackson is the most underappreciated Heisman winner ever. Not really. I think he's appropriately appreciated. Okay, Lamar Jackson does not project to the NFL. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. I'm 6'1.5", 194. I'm skinny. I've met him. He's too skinny. We've seen the run first pencil thin guy. It doesn't work. He is appropriately appreciated. He is very much like Trace McSorley at Penn State. Trace McSorley is terrific at Penn State. 29 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Nobody's talking about him because he doesn't project like a Sam Darnold at USC or a Josh Rosen at UCLA. Lamar Jackson is an awesome college quarterback who has a coach in Bobby Petrino, who has fooled us multiple times. Remember how good Brian Brom was under Bobby Petrino? 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns as a senior. Wah, 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 NFL. Ryan Mallett, 2 years with Bobby Petrino. 30 touchdowns both years, 4,000 yards. Can't play a lick. Lamar Jackson is considered an awesome college football player who is exhilarating to watch, who has dynamic ability to make tacklers miss. But he is thin. He tends to be run first. We've got a coach who has a history of making college quarterbacks look amazing, and he's got an alarmingly low completion percentage in the 50s, mid-50s in college. I don't think he's disrespected. I think he's appropriately respected. And the other thing to remember, Danny Werfel was a monster quarterback in college, but because he did not project greatly in the NFL, Spurrier got more attention than Werfel. Danny Werfel was unbelievable in college, but he had a weak arm. I could never figure out why he got drafted. He was out of the league quickly. World-class human being. I think he's a pastor now or something. Great guy. But Spurrier got the attention on that team, not Werfel. Once you project as a college player to the NFL as a star, that's when we talk about you a lot. Because that's like the NFL draft. It combines college and pro fans. That's why the draft gets huge numbers. So Sam Darnold, college fans are interested, and so are Jet fans, Niner fans, Cleveland fans, Dolphin fans, Bills fans. Lamar Jackson is an awesome college quarterback, run first, razor thin, low completion percentage, under a legendary college coach that produces huge numbers at quarterbacks. I do not think in any way he's underappreciated or disrespected. You don't win Heismans. You don't get talked about. You don't win all conference if you're disrespected. I think he is appropriately respected. And I also think this happens all the time. If you read history, if you're a fan of history and you read that we all learn reading history. Don't do that. You know what happens when you do that. Don't do this. We know, we see time and time again. We all kind of fell for the Wildcat for 2 years. We fell for the run and shoot back in the 80s for a couple years. We kind of fell in love with a run-first quarterback for a couple years. Well, Manziel didn't work, and Tebow didn't work, and RG3 didn't work, and Cap kind of worked but didn't work. We've seen history here. And because we watch history and watch football and we all have memories, Lamar Jackson appears to be another profoundly captivating college player who at the next level doesn't look like he'll be a star. Joel Klatt also mentioned this point yesterday about college quarterbacks and Lamar.
If we took your advice and just said, hey, let's celebrate these kids for what they are in college, I think we've got one of the deepest class of quarterbacks. And I'm not even talking about NFL. Again, this is just really good college quarterback play. This is the deepest class that I can remember since I've been covering the sport, which started in about 2006, 2007, right after I was done playing.
So add that component. I don't remember a year. There's like 20 college quarterbacks. So outside of Darnold, they're all going to get lost in this. I mean, because Darnold plays at high-power USC on a very good top-5 team. He's exhilarating to watch. We remember the Rose Bowl, and he projects as a number 1 pick. So he's going to be a blanket on all the other quarterbacks. I like Lamar as a college quarterback. I don't think, based on history, he projects as a great NFL player. Okay, so yesterday on the show, we had Rob Ryan. He was very funny. You know, sometimes you get guests in this business, and you book a guest. Like Paulie Malignaggi this morning with Christina Knight. We knew he was coming on. And I'm like, he'll be okay. And he was like, wow. We were both like, he was really, really interesting. And then sometimes you book people and you think they're going to be really, really interesting, and they're just duds. And they just have nothing to say. And that's probably happened to me a lot in my career. You book somebody and you ask questions and they're not that interesting. And then occasionally you get lucky like Paulie Malignaggi and you're like, whoa, I thought he would be fine. I mean, he's a Showtime analyst. He was terrific. Yesterday, I didn't know what I was going to get with Rob Ryan. I really didn't know what I was going to get. He ended up being funny and interesting. And it was really a joy. I mean, he was a really, really funny guy, and he was talking about Rex and his wife and their feet and stuff. So if you heard on the podcast, it was very funny. But he talked about Belichick. And because he's used to coach with Belichick, and he's coached against him many times. And he talked about not just that he's great, but what is it that makes Belichick different?
I think Bill Belichick is night and day the best coach that's ever coached. He takes everything in consideration. He will paint a picture to his team that if you just execute his plan, it'll work and you'll win. And he's right every time. Every new coach comes in saying the same thing. Hey, it's about our program. It's how we're going to run things. It's how we're going to do things. But they don't go in the detail that Bill Belichick does. He's got the social security of the unknown soldier. I mean, he knows it all. He really does. He knows it.
And he talked about a situation where Bill has a code, and it's a snowy day. And Bill knowing that in bad weather or certain quarterbacks won't throw it outside the hash marks. And it was a brief little story. But the point being is, one of the things I always like about Belichick, and there was a moment recently when Bill Belichick was asked a question at a press conference, and he gave a 1,000-word answer on roster size. It went 6 minutes. He gave even on just roster size, if you go back and Google the answer, he had thought about everything. And when Ernie Accorsi years ago interviewed the Belichick for the Cleveland Browns job, what Ernie Accorsi said was, what was fascinating about Belichick is he goes, for every position, and Accorsi told a story about nose tackle, he had a theory on what a nose tackle had to be built like and how he would play in particular systems. And Ernie Accorsi, a legendary GM, said, I'd never sat with a coach like that. That he was so detail-oriented, he had thought about everything. And I got to tell you something. I've been in this business like 25 years. I've always had a test for what I consider to be an agent, my boss, a superior. If I ask you a question, I'm not going to penalize you if I think you're wrong, because everybody's right and wrong. No boss is perfect. But do you have a well-thought-out answer, even if it's wrong? Because that will prove to me you're committed. Do you have a belief system? When I get the rare opportunity once a week to talk to Jimmy Johnson, so on Sundays I come in for the football show here on Fox, and Jimmy's the first guy here. He's a very, very light sleeper early up. The first thing I do is I go to Jimmy and ask him about 5 questions. I can ask Jimmy about guards. I can ask him about zones. I can ask him about weather. I can ask him about left-handed quarterbacks. Jimmy Johnson has thought of everything. And it doesn't matter that he's right on everything, but I know how committed he is to his craft if he's thought of everything. And if you go look at Belichick, 7 Super Bowls and 5 wins, and he's essentially a Wes Welker drop and a David Tyree remarkable catch from being 7 for 7. But the most, that David Tyree never had a play like that. And if this pass I'm showing you now is not complete, they win the game. And if Wes Welker makes that catch in the other Super Bowl that he dropped and usually catches, they win that. But all the Super Bowls New England's in, they're close. But I think the most remarkable story about the Super Bowls is on the interception I'm showing you right here against Seattle. When they asked the defensive back, I think it's Malcolm Butler, when they asked Malcolm Butler about the interception, his answer was fascinating. They had not only practiced that specific play in that specific situation, that Malcolm Butler said, I knew the minute Russell Wilson planted his foot, we knew the play that was coming. That's why I jumped the route. It wasn't about the receiver. He goes, the minute I saw Russell Wilson plant his foot on a 3-step drop, we knew the exact route and play they were going to run. And ask yourself, whether you like the Patriots or not, in a close game late, have you ever once thought against Belichick, my guy will be better with details? Never. Because Bill thinks of everything, even if he's wrong. And that is a really important thing for bosses, executives, decision makers, and coaches. I'm not seeking right all the time because nobody's always right. But are you at least committed enough that you've thought of something? That you've sat at a table by yourself on your deck having a cigar and you've thought about rebuilding your rosters? Every year during the rules committee meetings, when they propose new rules, you ever notice who has a great idea every year, or at least an idea? It's always Belichick. The other guy in the league that does this is Andy Reid. Win, lose, right, wrong. Andy Reid has a smart opinion on everything, or at least a well-thought-out opinion. That's what makes Belichick special. You know, it's funny. We had Paulie Malignaggi on, and he was talking about, he's the sparring partner for Conor McGregor. And generally, the rule, I would say, in business or life is you don't want to surround yourself just with yes men, right? That you do want to surround yourself with people that will, if not call you out, bring your attention to maybe a slight or a flaw or a weakness. And I think that's really important when you work on a radio show, you're a mayor, you're a high school principal. You don't want to surround yourself with just yes men. Sometimes critical thinking's really, really important in the room. But boxing's different. Boxing is so psychological that you have to have complete and utter 100% confidence going into a ring. Do not overthink. You can have no self-doubt. We've seen when Ronda Rousey walked into a ring and had a little self-doubt, fight was over in 2 minutes. Like, boxing is different. That I don't think, because Paulie Malignaggi talked about a weakness with Conor McGregor. Let's play the bite here.
He's got to stop trying to convince everybody that he can do it and show everybody he can do it on fight night, because editing videos and mixing and matching footage is not what you're going to be able to do in a live fight against Floyd Mayweather. So, like I said, I think he needs a hug, but at the end of the day, he needs some strong advice. And the yes men in his corner need to stop being cheerleaders and being trained, and they need to start being trainers.
So let me just ask you this. You're fighting the greatest fighter pound for pound. You are at a decided skill mismatch. Is it the worst thing in the world if Conor is absurdly confident, almost delusional, wants to hear no criticism, know he is outmatched in a skill level? He will win this fight or even be viable only if he's borderline delusionally confident. And that is his only prayer. I don't generally believe in it. But in this instance, if I'm Conor McGregor, Derek Jeter used to say this. I was in a steakhouse years ago in Tampa, and that's the Yankee spring training home. And I'm sitting there, and I just take a look over to the left, and Jeter walks in with his boys. Jeter always had about 5 or 6 guys. They were his boys. And I remember reading a story soon thereafter, and Jeter talked about, I don't second guess. I surround myself with positive, optimistic people. I don't want, and Jeter said it, I don't want stuff getting in my head. It's baseball. There are long stretches of inactivity. I don't want to doubt things. I don't want to second guess. I want positive people around me to make me feel good and confident. And I know that sounds weird, but sometimes in sports, like A-Rod, thought too much. Jeter, go up, hit the ball hard. I think sometimes in sports, that diluted life is not the world's worst thing. I know it sounds crazy, but we have seen something in sports, you and I, Christine, our entire lives. Kobe Bryant could go 0 for 11, and he wants the 12th shot. LeBron, on occasion, has lost confidence. Like, LeBron sometimes is an overthinker. Kobe's like, give me the ball, get out of my face. Kobe, you've missed the last 11 shots. I'm making my next 11. It's almost bizarre. It's like, dude, share the ball. Like, Michael Jordan and Kobe kind of surrounded themselves with people who told them what they wanted to hear, and it worked. And LeBron, as great as he is, and as A-Rod, as great as he is, sometimes they're overthinkers. Sometimes they overanalyze. What's the saying? Paralysis by analysis? Maybe Conor McGregor is best served being deluded.
I totally hear what you're saying, but that confidence and that delusion is going to go out the window the first time that Floyd really hits him. And the first time that he kind of loses his legs or he starts to feel something in his head, that's when skill has to come into play, and you can no longer rely on your delusion because your head is literally spinning.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah, like you have, I get that he does need to feel very confident going in,
like almost ridiculously
but he
confident.
Does, like I've watched all the shows leading up to the fight, and Conor's really proud about bringing in his entire crew and like his jiu-jitsu coach and who's been with him forever, and all these guys who have been with him forever. And it's like, but for what? Because you can't use jiu-jitsu, you have to box. So who is the guy that's leading you in the right direction for this fight? They are all yes men, and they're making him feel great, but that really does go out the window the first time Floyd knocks a really good punch.
I had a friend who was a really good golfer. His name was Brian. And I'm not going to mention the guy in the PGA, but he played with a PGA player. And Brian has done very, very well for himself, but he didn't make the PGA, and probably good enough talent-wise. And I was asking him one time about this guy, and I'm not going to mention this guy, but he's on the tour, and he's won a couple of majors. Not a ton, but he's a legit PGA player. And he said his greatest strength was he wasn't very smart. He goes, I tend to be an overanalyzer, and this guy goes out and lets her rip, and he's not much of a thinker, not one of the sharpest bulbs. And he said, to be honest with you, he goes, Phil Mickelson sometimes, overthinker. David Duval, overthinker. And sometimes in sports delusion, in small, brief spots. I mean, I always thought A-Rod was the most talented baseball player I ever saw, he and Ken Griffey. I think sometimes A-Rod's too damn smart. I've sat and talked to A-Rod for a half hour. A-Rod is so much smarter than, forget athletes, than most people. I mean, A-Rod's functioning at a you can talk to him about real estate, about cultures. A-Rod's a thinker. And sometimes, despite his talent, he overthought. Just I don't know. So with Conor, it'll be interesting, man. He is going to be completely outskilled. That part I know. Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
This literally just broke. Nevada is going to allow Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather to use 8-ounce gloves. This is a one-time thing. They're saying it's unheard of that they're letting this happen, but at the same time, it's also unheard of that they're letting a guy with a perfect record fight a guy who's literally never boxed professionally. So maybe that's why they're making the exception. But typically, not typically, always, if you're 147 pounds or less, you have to use 8-ounce gloves. If you're 154 and up, you use 10-ounce gloves.
So both fighters have agreed to this.
Yeah, they both agreed to it. You would think that it benefits Conor because he's used to using smaller gloves.
I think that is the perception. You are right. But I still say this. Floyd's going to land far more punches than Conor. Conor's just going to bleed faster. Like, isn't Floyd going to land 5-1 punches? Because he's much faster. And I know everybody's thinking, Conor now will get the big knockout. I don't think Conor's going to land a lot of punches.
Well, the weirdest thing, too, is that they're fighting at 154, but Conor's probably going to weigh like 170 pounds once they actually go into the ring. So it really is a disadvantage in that way to Floyd. But I remember when Conor said, it was in one of the press conferences, well, why don't we fight with smaller gloves? And Floyd said, all right, let's do it. And Conor called him out like, we can't do that because that's not allowed. And now they are letting it happen. So both of them agreed to it. It makes me wonder what kind of precedent this sets for boxing moving forward. And now they'll have to look at every guy who asks if they can use a different size gloves than what the laws usually allow.
This feels like an exception fight.
It is an exception, but also it's a precedent. So what happens next? Especially if Conor fights again. If he's still a boxer, do all the rules change?
I don't know.
Okay. Josh Rosen is eligible to leave UCLA after this year, and Jim Mora was doing an interview with Yahoo, I believe, and he said, my firm belief is that he will not leave. He said, I have an option to change my opinion, but as we sit here right now, I can really honestly say I don't think he's going to leave. Do you think that's a good move?
I don't know. I've told you I know his mom. He is a student. I think he really embraces the academic side, and I think UCLA is an amazing university. But he's had an injury in college, and so I wonder, like some of these running backs, does he think, listen, if I'm gonna get this NFL contract, do I want to play 13 more college games and get beat up? I tend to think that both Sam Darnold and Rosen are 60-40 leave, 65-35 leave with both.
Okay. And finally, which team do you think is drawing the most bets to win the Super Bowl in Vegas? Drawing the most bets.
New England.
No, think about the question. Drawing the most bets to win the Super Bowl. Like, what's the most appealing bet?
So it would be an underdog like McGregor. So what's the most appealing bet? Okay. Oakland.
Yeah. That's exactly right. The Raiders. So they're 20. Their Super Bowl title odds were as high as 20-1 in some books. So they're getting the most bets.
Well, I also think a lot of people in Vegas, Vegas is a Raiders town. If you go to Vegas right now, there are Raider hats everywhere, and there's a lot of Raider fans. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I think they're really fun to watch. My question with the Raiders is they're back 7. They're not good. They're just inside linebackers, back stable. They're not real good back there. They're a team that'll be in wild games this year. They'll win some, they'll lose some, but boy, they're going to have to win the Super Bowl 38-36. They're not going to stop really good quarterbacks.
Do you think that it's mostly local people in Vegas placing bets or outsiders?
I think the odds, I think they have a great young quarterback and the odds work and they're popular. And I think everything's converging where they're fun, they're popular, they have a star quarterback, they were good last year, and the odds are pretty decent. They're not an overwhelming favorite. So I think a bunch of, and people are kind of bored with New England. Plus, New England's the favorite, so the odds aren't as good.
Right. Or you can look at it as, well, it's not quite as...
They're an okay. I
in
put
stone as Floyd, but you
Right.
can look at it as an investment.
Right. Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Won a Super Bowl. Key analyst for Fox Sports 1. Let's bring on Greg Jennings. I saw something today that is just really, I think we talked about this last time, but this made me laugh. Eli Manning said today, I want to play 4 more years for the Giants. They've had a bad O-line for 6 years. Kirk Cousins said yesterday, I want to remain with one team, even though his team barely likes him. Andrew Luck could not rush fast enough to re-sign to a team with a bad O-line, a lousy GM, and a quirky owner. And Aaron Rodgers has a legitimate argument, I haven't been given the support I need for Super Bowls. And yet he has said, I never want to play for anybody else. Kyrie Irving gets everything and wants out of town. We were talking about this morning at length, and we just can't figure it out. For some reason, NFL quarterbacks, and we talked about this last time, they are loyal beyond loyal. Marginal NBA players are looking for a better deal. Is it just the basketball culture is different?
I think it's the basketball culture is different, and I also think that when you get 2 elite guys, we're just going to start with 2. Hoops. You can still pay them top dollar. When you start collaborating in the NFL, you start looking at your slice of pie starts to shrink.
Once the quarterback gets his.
Once the quarterback gets his, it's like, well, let's look at New Orleans. Drew Brees has tied up so much money, they can't get anything. Skill positions, who wants to go there?
That's why they gave up Brandon Cooks.
Exactly. They can't pay anybody. And so when
in the NBA, there's a sense that like 6 guys can get paid.
Absolutely. And you talk about a salary cap that's almost equal to a 12-man roster versus a 53-man roster. I mean, you got it. You can spread it around.
So basically, basketball players are like, listen, as long as you're one of the top 4 or 5 guys on any team, you get rich.
Yeah, and
you got to be top 1 or 2 on an NFL team.
Yeah, and you think about the dynamic in basketball. You got young kids playing together and starting to know one another and develop relationships through AAU at young ages. So there is this appeal to want to collaborate and
that's
get
a
on
really
the
good
court
point.
Together and put on the same uniform.
That's what guys in the room this morning we talked about that. Like in football, your rivals are your rivals. Like even in college, you'd never a kid at a great high school in Hoover, Alabama. He first of all, he's never going to play the kid in Texas.
Right.
In basketball, by 14, Dwight Howard knew every good player in the country and played with them.
And in basketball, it's like when you leave the team that drafted you and you go somewhere else, your value doesn't go down. It seems to continue to escalate. In football, when you leave your team that drafted you, it's almost like you're now devalued just a little bit because it's like, how did that separation come about?
Why did they get rid of him?
Exactly.
Why did the Steelers
you look at Adrian Peterson. Let's just use Adrian Peterson for an example. He was with the Minnesota Vikings for 10 years?
Yeah.
The culture there, he knew. He knew, you know what? I'm gonna be limited on Wednesdays. I'm not gonna practice on Thursdays. Maybe Friday, I'll give you Friday. You know, there was this comfort there. They knew him. They knew what to expect. They knew what they were going to get.
So if a player can get that in the NFL, why leave it?
Exactly, because now he's with New Orleans.
And they want him to practice.
And they want, I got to see you practice. We got a lot of young guys that look up to you that are going to follow your lead. I want to see you do it on the practice field as well as on the. Here's the thing, matter of fact, I was talking to a coach, and with the Bills, and they were thinking about signing Anquan Bolden. When you have an older guy, Anquan Bolden has been a great player in this league for years.
Great locker room guy,
absolutely
gamer.
They start to look at their young guys and see, I want to bring this guy in, but not so much for what he's going to do for me on Sundays, but what he's going to do to my locker room dynamic. It just shifts in football when the older you get, your value shifts, your playing ability. They feel like, well, we don't expect you to do that. In the NBA, they expect you to put up buckets. Bottom line, whatever you were doing before, we want you doing that with us.
Do you ever wish you would have played basketball?
Absolutely.
Somebody once told me, a coach told me this about a year ago. He said the NFL is all frustrated basketball players. He goes,
you know what? I can believe that because you got a lot of guys who played in the NFL that can really play ball.
There's no question.
Most
NBA guys are skinny and don't like football.
Yeah.
NFL guys have put on weight. They used to be 180 pounds. Now they're 215. Mm-hmm. They got bigger for football.
Absolutely.
But they weren't ripped when they were 17.
No, and for me, football, I was playing basketball before football.
And you were good.
And I was really good, and I thought lifting weights was going to mess up my jump shot. So I never would lift weights. And then I started playing football, and it just was so easy. It was almost unreal how easy football was, and it kind of just took off, and yeah,
you regret it once in a while.
I wouldn't say I regret it. I have this little man that sits on my shoulder like, if you would have played basketball.
Guaranteed money. It's a lot of guaranteed money.
Absolutely.
So I see Men's Fitness. Aaron Rodgers is on the cover. He's a good-looking guy.
He looks good. Like, as far as his fit, he looks good in that photo.
Yeah. Do we have a picture of that thing? He looks really good. And
do you mean fit like his outfit, or
no?
His,
I mean, just
like
looks
physically. Like I've seen Aaron. He I don't know if it's Photoshop or that's him training, but he looks really fit.
Okay, so he was talking the other day. We may have the soundbite. He was talking about his body and stuff, and he kind of mentioned Brady. Play the tape if we could.
I think about 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. See how long Brady plays.
And it's funny because I see Brady and Rodgers as totally separate personalities. Tom embraces the system. Aaron tolerates it. Tom is all family. I've seen Aaron battle with family. Tom rarely ad-libs, considers it almost slighting Belichick. I think Aaron loves to ad-lib, sometimes enjoying poking McCarthy. Like, I see Brady and I see Aaron as just different personalities.
Absolutely.
I think Aaron is more of an independent. He's almost... If Aaron Rodgers was in a band, I'd be like, yeah, Aaron is an independent, creative guy. And creative people can be more pushback. Tom is more company guy. I could see him working and running an IBM. I'm almost a politician. Like, you played with Aaron. Do you see a different Aaron talking today? Like when now he mentions about playing to 40. I never in my wildest dreams thought, Aaron will want to play till 40. I thought he would get out of here at 37 and go play music.
Looking at that, I'll start back. When I was playing with Aaron, I recall him sharing with me, I don't want to play.
That's what I thought.
15, 20 years in this league. That was his mindset. Looking at it, I mean, number one, he and Brady have a great relationship.
They do?
They have a great relationship. And, he's looking at Tom Brady and his health and how he's been able to continue to play at a high level. And he probably thinks, you know what, maybe I think the older you get, the more mature you become, and the more it starts to mean a little bit, it's something different. It's something different the older you get, specifically at the quarterback position. And when you are able to play at a high level, which I don't want to make it seem like what Brady's doing is common, because it is so uncommon.
Ridiculous.
It is like, this is not the norm. You don't have a guy play in his late 30s, pushing 40.
Better than he was 6 years ago.
Yes.
And but I guess my takeaway was I never saw Aaron as a lifer. I saw him as sort of an independent guy who was going to play the game and get out and like go into music. Like literally, he could be a music producer, an actor. He's a good-looking guy. He could be an actor. But it was interesting when I heard him say that. I was thinking, is he watching Brady and saying, I kind of like to be the elder statesman of the league for like 6 years?
See, you know what? I don't know. The dynamic between the two are different. And
maybe they're more similar than we think.
They're similar, but
I mean, you said they're buddies.
When you think about Tom, he handles what's said outside of the locker room a lot different, and within the locker room a lot different. You think about if Aaron Rodgers was involved in Deflategate, and that was Aaron Rodgers, and the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl, and you have a chance on the podium, you get the Super Bowl MVP. You're going to stand next to Roger Goodell. He's going to hand over that trophy to you. Shake your hand.
Aaron Rodgers.
You think that we're talking about nothing? Tom gave us nothing.
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 Tom's very guarded. I actually think Aaron's way more transparent and expressive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like Aaron will tell you what he thinks.
Absolutely. You ask any media reporter in Green Bay, any journalist, they have stories about what they've said that wasn't positive, but it doesn't even have to be all the way negative. If it's not in line.
Oh no, Aaron hears everything.
He recalls and pulls back everything you've said. If it's
he
not,
probably doesn't like. He doesn't like me. He may not like you anymore.
You know what?
Do you text?
I don't. But I'm going to tell you one thing about me. I'm not one that really. I care what people think. I don't want anyone to ever believe that that's something that people do. I honestly feel like if there's one person that's on TV that's been a professional athlete that doesn't care, it's Charles Barkley. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't really care. But I couldn't care your opinion. Like if you meet me, I care what you think about me coming off. But if you don't know me, I couldn't care less of your opinion.
There's a great writer. He's the late David Foster Wallace. And I thought he had the biggest brain of any writer I've ever read. He passed away. He committed
saddest movie ever.
Yeah, he committed suicide. He was an absolute genius. If writers can be geniuses. And he used to always say, you'll worry much less about what people think of you when you realize how seldom they do.
Wow, that's deep.
That's why
powerful.
he had a big brain. It took me about an hour to figure that one out.
That's deep.
But I think
I like that.
Yeah, Aaron, and he's a smart dude. Aaron he is very, very aware of what is said.
Yeah, and
that's okay. By the way, Tom probably is. He just deals with it differently.
Exactly.
Tom hears it.
And for me, when you talk about playing until you're 40, 42, 43, 44, there's going to be a lot that people have to say that they're going to question you now. Because the expectation doesn't change. It gets greater. It gets more challenging because the Aaron that we see today, we're going to expect continue like an increase of play. And typically what we see when guys get older is a subtle decline, and then
I think Aaron's going to age pretty well. I think smart guys age well. I think Russell Wilson, people think, oh, Russell's smart.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not going to age well, but the expectation gets a little bit greater, specifically for guys like Aaron. I mean, because he's always made great decisions. He's very smart with the football. He's taking care of but there was a time he did not take care of his body.
Listen, Brady was drinking a lot of beers as a rookie. Let's not make Tom Brady perfect. Tom was partying like crazy for the first 4 years in this league. His name is Greg Jennings. Back in a second, The Herd. Welcome back. We have a big debate here. And Christine knows way more about this stuff than I do.
Well, put that into context because that sounds bad.
Well, there's a picture of Aaron Rodgers on Men's Fitness, and he looks very good. He's ripped up. And I said, he looks. And Christine, you said, well, it's what do you call it?
Photoshopped.
Airbrushed or something?
No, it's photoshopped
or
retouched.
What does that mean?
It means that they make certain alterations of the picture to make you look better. But I'm not even saying this because it's specifically Aaron Rodgers and I think that looks fake. I'm saying it because every magazine cover is photoshopped.
Well, first of all,
even supermodels.
He's got salon perfect hair, so they didn't touch his hair.
You can fix your hair in Photoshop too.
The only thing I would say about this picture, now I want you guys to look at this. Hold on. Okay, just look at this picture again.
I want to pull this up too because
his biceps
goodness.
look a little bigger than they do during games. That's the only thing I'd say. His biceps look a little swole.
I wish that you could see what I'm looking at right now because I have all these pictures of before and afters of magazine covers, like what they looked like originally and what they were photoshopped to, so you can see how much it's edited.
I mean, I actually was jogging yesterday and somebody took a picture of me. I don't believe in photoshopping, and that is what I look like.
Just natural?
Yeah,
so you're covering up your tattoos every day then.
Yeah, that's me naturally.
Okay.
That is very virile. Okay, let's go back to Aaron Rodgers again. Is that real or photoshopped? It's men's
it's
fitness.
real, but it's also photoshopped.
So what would you Photoshop with him?
You probably smooth out his skin a little bit.
It literally has dermatological perfect skin. I've never seen him with a pimple.
Okay. They probably made his body more symmetrical.
I mean, this is what he.
They might have made his arms look a little bigger.
His arms do look a little, but you know what? In fairness,
lighting, they probably edited the lighting a bit.
Well, of course they have lighting. I mean, you wouldn't look like that walking down the street. There's not lighting following you.
You still tweak it.
Yes, I would say when I watch Aaron play, his biceps look bigger there than normal.
You have a history of debating this because we had this issue with when your first book came out. And you're shirtless on the cover.
That's
you
me.
Claim it's not photoshopped.
No. Unfortunately, it's me because I was sick as a dog that week and hadn't worked out in a week and looked like hell. And it was
every guest that came on our show when we talked to them ahead of the interview. Every single one of them asked if that was photoshopped.
No, I work out every day. I'm not. But first of all, even if you look at that picture, I'm not ripped or anything. But I'm a 45-year-old guy that is not doesn't have a beer keg. All right,
I believe Schlereth still does not believe that
Schlereth is jealous.
During the break, I want to show you these pictures. You're gonna die. It's really crazy.
I hope I don't die soon.
Well, don't die like that.
I've said a lot of nice stuff about Aaron Rodgers today. I have to revert back to my old cynical form on Aaron Rodgers. A little too cushy lately. With TrueCar, you can find out what other people in your area paid for the same car you're looking for. On average, save over $3,000. Visit your new or used TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. We're only 2 hours. We're going to Fox Sports Go. Is that what we're going to?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to Fox Sports. There's UEFA soccer and stuff. We have a good last hour. Jay Glazer's going to stop by. Michael Vick's going to stop by our show. So we got a really, really good last hour. I wasn't last time Michael Vick was on. I was all jacked up to interview him, and I wasn't here. Did I have a dentist? I don't even know where I was. I was suddenly out of the blue. I was gone. I wanted to talk to Michael Vick. I always found him. I interviewed him twice at the old place. I really liked him. I thought he was a very conscientious guy, really, who had a roller coaster life, but an interesting guy. He's around the corner. It's the Herd. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and this hour, Fox Sports Go. Christine Leahy joining me in hour number 3 today. We've had a spirited show. Paulie Malignaggi was terrific.
It was great, and I believe everything he says.
So did I mostly.
Mostly.
Jay Glazer joining us in 7 minutes. But first, yes, there's Jay. But first, I want to get to this. When you're 20 or you're 30, your bosses, your executives, the decision makers at your workplace, they're much more accepting of your quirkiness, let's say. Sometimes it's even celebrated. If you're really intense in your 20s, hey, Charlotte is passionate. Justin is all in. That kid is fiery. Your forgetfulness in your 20s or 30s. Hey, come on, man. He's going 100 miles an hour. I love kids like that. Of course, he forgot his car keys. Man, that kid, every time he comes into work, he's just going. What do you expect? Come to work hungover in your 20s. Hey, it's a badge of honor. Tim works hard, plays hard. You know what I mean? You know what we used to be like. Work hard, play hard. That guy, I love him. And then as you age, those all become deficiencies. Bob isn't intense. Bob's now 64 and he's got a temper. Bob Bob doesn't work well with others. His forgetfulness, Bob's losing a step. He's hungover. Bob may have a problem. He could be an alcoholic. That's the way it works. Eccentric in your 20s becomes sad and crazy in your 60s. Unique at 29 becomes out of touch at 59. I tell my wife this all the time. I'm a little different, not proud of all of it, just kind of weird. I said my companies have celebrated it so far, but we better save our money because at 60, Colin's lost it. He's gone cuckoo. No, I've been cuckoo since I was 9, but it'll be judged differently when you hit certain ages. Now, it depends on your career in certain ages, but what happens as you age, and this is happening to Tom Brady, he is entering a very unforgiving place. And I like to call it the whisper tunnel. People don't tell you to your face, and they don't say it out loud. They whisper things about you. And that's what happens as a 60-year-old broadcaster and a 40-year-old quarterback. Tom Brady has entered the whisper tunnel. His uniqueness, his mistakes will be judged differently. Now, when Tom's great, he'll still be judged as, come on, the GOAT. But when Tom has a bad second half or a bad first half like the Super Bowl, he was in the whisper tunnel. Tom is up. He just can't avoid the rush like he used to. When Tom has a bad second half this year, he's wearing down. I mean, you can just see it. Although he had all sorts of bad halves in his late 20s and early 30s. Mistakes are viewed as you age, depending on the age and your profession, through the prism only of age. And so I'm listening to radio today, and all the shows as I'm driving in are talking about Garoppolo and Tom Brady and what's going to happen. Nothing's really going to happen that you hear this year. Tom will be in the whisper tunnel. But the whisper tunnel eventually becomes audible when they find a replacement they think is ready. You're the 68-year-old attorney in the law firm. 29-year-old from Harvard walks in. The whispers, Bob is old, become at lunch when Bob's not there. Bob's old. I like the young kid. That's when you'll know Brady is in trouble. Because now, Brady right now, and I sensed this last year, entered the whisper tunnel, and he's going to be in the whisper tunnel this year. When the whispers become audible with a young, athletic, handsome, virile Jimmy Garoppolo, and there'll be a quote in the next year, then you know Tom's in trouble. You're allowed flaws and quirkiness in your 20s, 30s. Then you go into the whisper tunnel, and then the whispers become audible. They are not yet for Tom Brady. The first time you hear it, a quote, an anonymous source on Garoppolo, that officially is the beginning of the end. All right, I want to talk about something. Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor is August 26th. And so yesterday I'm on Speak for Yourself, and we brought in a guy, I hadn't seen him in 30 years. We remembered each other but didn't know each other, John Horn. When I was in Vegas out of college, John Horn was in the Mike Tyson group. And he was kind of a controversial figure, kind of strong-willed guy. The media and him kind of battled. But we started talking about Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. And he talked about what McGregor doesn't have to win the fight. He just sort of needs to be viable and something could happen.
This man you're talking about right here, just on his grit, his cockiness, his confidence alone, and it only has to be in his mind. It doesn't have to be in my mind. It doesn't have to be in yours. He's a capable professional fighter who has no idea what we're talking about. Floyd's going to walk through him. He's really he don't understand what planet we're living on right now. It's going to take Floyd 3 or 4 rounds to make this man start to believe, okay, maybe he's better than I thought he was.
The point being, he thinks McGregor's going to do pretty well. He does not think McGregor's going to win, but he thinks he's going to represent himself in very strong fashion. And here's the interesting thing. The reason the UFC has grown so quickly is strong management. It's why most companies grow quickly. Amazon, Facebook, companies that grow quickly, they have good management. And in the UFC, fighters don't control the sport. But the problem with strong management generally equals less pay, less leverage for the star employee. Dana White controls all fights and all purses in the UFC. Floyd Mayweather is his own promoter. He doesn't have to give 40, 50, or whatever percent it is to the boss and the system. Is that the UFC is about the system and the brand and the business, like the NFL. Boxing's about the star fighter, like the NBA. Who makes more money? And so what I think's compelling in this fight is I do not expect McGregor to win the fight or even a round. But if he is interesting and compelling and gives a decent representation and makes Floyd a little uncomfortable, could UFC lose their hands-down biggest star to boxing? I'm going to ask our next guest about that and some football. You know him well via the Coward Global Satellite Network from Washington. He's going to sit down with Kirk Cousins today. Jay Glazer, I'm looking here at a list of 7 or 8 camps you've been to, Jay, Fox NFL insider. First of all, you were with Brady Belichick yesterday. We're talking about the retirement thing. What is a New England Patriot camp like, Jay Glazer?
Oh, man, first of all, I asked Brady actually yesterday, why are you still doing this? Like, how long is it going to go on? And he's like, I love it. Why would I stop? And, it's interesting because in today's day and age, as you go around these camps and you start talking more and more of these vets, the veterans are saying it's easier for us now to excel in this millennial age. Millennials kind of think that, hey, I'm famous, because it's social media. I'm rich, I'm famous. They don't put as much work in. So the Tom Brady's of the world are now thinking it's actually easier for me to kind of excel at this stage because guys don't put the work in. Back the last generation, everybody was a grunt. Now that's not the case.
That is a really interesting point. Is Tom Brady's generation, we're all grinders. By the way, you're in that generation. I'm in that generation. We see that often in our business as well. Now, you're going to sit down with Kirk Cousins today, which is fantastic because I like him, Jay. I think he's a franchise guy. But Washington has given mixed signals. Yet I read this morning that Kirk Cousins loves Washington and he wants to stay there forever. Are you surprised, despite a little lack of respect, he is so connected still with his football team?
It's interesting. The way this league is, if you don't have a quarterback, your life is miserable. These guys don't grow on trees. It's so bad. Well, you don't have a quarterback. All of a sudden, you can't coach. Everybody's dumb. Your game plans are dumb. When you do have a quarterback, suddenly you're a smart coach. Suddenly your game plans work. So they have a quarterback who, A, the players follow, B, is extremely smart, and C, the guy can win. So, yeah, I think in a situation like this, hey, whatever the market dictates, it dictates. You can't look at Kirk Cousins and blame him that these contracts are so big for quarterbacks. It's just fair market value for the guy. But can he win? Yes. Again, this is a team that not too long ago, just a few years ago, mortgaged everything.
Yes.
For a guy in RG3, but we don't know if he'll have any sort of a career at all going forward. And that's how desperate you get when you don't have a quarterback. So when you do, pay him.
I don't know who picked the camps you should go to, but I swear to God, they're all the teams I'm interested in. You went to the Dolphins camp, which I'm fascinated with the Jay Cutler situation. What was it like, Jay?
Yeah, here's an interesting thing. And I was there, I think, the day or two after they signed him. And I sat up here with Adam Gase and different executives of the team, and they all said the same thing. What we wanted to do is show the world, but especially our locker room, we're not giving up. Like, we're there. We felt we made big strides last year, and we didn't want to have a pity party for ourselves. So by us going out and getting a guy like Jay Cutler, who Adam Gase, obviously has had a very good working relationship with in the past, it sent a message to everybody in that locker room that we're not just going to sit idly by and say, oh, woe was me. We lost our quarterback. The one thing I'll tell you, though, is the depression that hit that place when Tannehill went down was a little, I'm not going to say staggering, but there's injuries all the time in this league. They were so upset by that. Gase actually went to the hospital with him because they thought he really took that step with the entire locker room, with how he was starting to work that game plan. They thought Tannehill was on the verge of hitting that top 5 or 6 elite passers in this league. They really did.
Well, I think you make a great point that Jay Cutler psychologically was as important as he was physically, that, hey, guys, this season we were a playoff team. We're going to do it again. You also visited the Panthers, a team I'm fascinated with. Christian McCaffrey. They want Cam to throw more and run less. Give me your impressions of McCaffrey and Cam and how that baby's going to work out, Jay.
Oh, it was pretty funny. He was sitting up here. We interviewed him here on the bus, and he was like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm trying not to be starstruck. I'm looking over there at Houston Texans the other day, and there's J.J. Watt, and there's Cushing, and there's Clowney over there. But we talked about the millennials. He's not. He is a grunt, man. All he knows is work. And when you talk to all the players on the team, they're like, yeah, we're still going to treat him like a rookie, but he's not like every other rookie. This guy, all he wants to – I think he's one of those guys who you could say, we're not going to pay you to play, but you get to play in this game – and you may have to pay us, and he'll say, how much? I'm in. Sign me up. And he's different than most of these young guys.
Before I get to Conor McGregor thoughts, because I really want your opinion on that, one more NFL question. Jay Glazer joining us from Washington's camp, going to sit down with Kirk Cousins today, is that when you go around the league, I have lobbied for years, fewer preseason games, but more inter-squad practices. When you were at New England, I think they were playing the Texans or something, practicing with Houston, Bill O'Brien's team.
Right.
Football coaches are an interesting lot, Jay. They're very covert. It's almost military. They don't want to give secrets away. But Belichick is willing, with an AFC rival, to practice. Were you surprised by that?
No, because his relationship with Bill O'Brien. They got it down pretty good. But, I do think that these are much better than preseason games. Preseason games, we're looking at a bunch of guys who'll be working over at the club soon in about 3 weeks, right? We're not really watching their starters. In this case, you get to see starters against starters. And what happens now also in about week 3 in camp, whatever it is, guys start itching to start throwing bombs on their own teammates. So it's really good that you get another jersey to start doing that with. I love the intra-squad scrimmages and practices. And I know the guys do also because it gives them somebody else to hit.
And finally, I'm really interested. You have a very successful gym, and you train a lot of world-class athletes and a lot of UFC guys. And, of course, I'm not stepping near that gym because I'd end up getting whacked, and it's too hard for me. I like to go for easy jogs.
Come on, it's not too hard for you.
Yes, it
That's
is.
not the case. We would build you up the right way. You come out of that place like Thor, like, and you start smashing people.
No, I'd come out of that gym sore, not like Thor, okay? But I want to ask you about McGregor. Listen, I don't think he's going to win the fight.
Hey, wait, real quick. Okay, Colin, I heard you guys were talking about Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And whether he was photoshopped. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you talking about him earlier? He trained at our gym this offseason. It is not photoshopped. He looked phenomenal. I know we're not in the article. Dude works his butt off. I'm telling you, wasn't photoshopped. Guy worked his butt off. I got to be honest with you. Not Photoshop. There it is, on the record right there.
Christine doesn't believe you, but
I'm not saying he doesn't work his butt off, but even the people who do work their butt off, they still get a little.
His biceps look a little.
No. Body comp definitely changed from when I think he came in February, and then was even during OTAs he kept coming back and forth. His body comp changed a lot. There's one thing about going to a gym. Half our players in there, we got to push them hard just to work that hard. He's one of those guys where if you could go put him on a heavy bag and say, hey, we need you to go hit that bag, and forget to tell him to stop, we'll come back on Tuesday, he'll still be hitting the bag.
There you go.
He's like a hockey player.
And finally, when you talk to UFC
McGregor
people,
thing.
do UFC people you talk to think McGregor has a shot? Do you think he has a shot?
Listen, here's what people have to understand. It is a completely different sport. It's like somebody going from rugby coming into the NFL. Not even close. Boxing, you kind of turn your body to the side, give less of a target, and your range is like right here, and it's about getting in a rhythm for an hour. When you do kickboxing, your range is a little bit further out. You change your body stance a little too because you got to check kicks. MMA, your distance is all the way out here because of takedowns. The range is completely different. And again, one is about getting in a rhythm for an hour. The other one is a violent sprint that can go anywhere from 1 minute to 25 minutes. Completely different sports. It's not even close.
And by the way, you have a very nice tan, and I am concerned about a sunburn. SP 30. I want SPF 30, Jay. You're getting a lot of sun this summer.
I'm getting too much sun, man. I'm starting to look like the old lady from Son About Mary.
Jay Glazer. Good seeing you, bud.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it.
You bet. All sorts of good stuff from Jay Glazer. Michael Vick's around the corner. Michael Vick's around the corner. I thought it was interesting. Jay Glazer said something years ago when I worked at the other place. I was talking to one of my bosses over there. You know, the ones that all hate me now? And I was talking to one of my bosses over there.
They actually hate you. I don't think they hate you.
No, they're fine. I don't know.
Unless they listen to you talk about them on the show, in which case they might.
I don't badmouth them. I don't talk about individuals. But I was talking to him years ago, and I said, the great thing about being my age in this business is the young people coming up in the business, they're not going to put in 3 hours of prep for a show. Millennials don't work like that.
You can't stop saying that. Because first of all, I'm a millennial, okay? And you can't categorize all millennials that way. You know how many jobs I have? Like 5. I work very hard.
Yeah. Pizza shop, surf shop.
And you know what? If I did, more power to me. And shame on you for letting me work in a pizza shop while I have this job.
You're the only hardworking millennial then.
That's not true. It's just not true. It's just that millennials go about it in a different way. And you can't that's like me saying everyone your age does this. Like, that's just not true. Everyone's a different person.
It is not true, but it is. There are generational tendencies. Like, millennials are way more into collaboration, which is one of the really cool things with millennials.
Yes.
They're willing to work with other people. They don't build fences all the time.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Those millennials, so dumb.
Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Have you been watching Hard Knocks?
I have not watched Hard Knocks yet. In fact, you know the funny story? Tampa Bay is staying in a team hotel in Tampa that doesn't carry HBO, so the Buccaneers cannot watch their own show on Hard Knocks.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
But you can watch it on the HBO Go app. So I'm sure they all have that.
Oh, all right.
That's one way to do it. See, those streaming things, you know.
Yeah. Taking over the world.
Don't need a TV. Don't need cable. So Jameis Winston, they caught this moment. It was in a preseason game where Ryan Griffin, the backup quarterback, got hurt. And Jameis Winston saw James Jones and Jarvis Harrison on the bench talking and almost kind of laughing after this injury happened. So we have video now, and I believe this is from Hard Knocks, of Winston's reaction for them.
I'm happy y'all having fun, but Ryan just hurt his shoulder.
Ooh, damn.
So keep having fun.
Wow.
I like that.
I like that.
Right? I've been watching Hard Knocks. I've been impressed, but I'm always hesitant. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Damn.
But he seems like he's really taking on the leader.
Holy
role,
moly. I love Jameis Winston now.
Right? Doesn't that makes me like
that
it.
was like Dirty Harry. That was Clint Eastwood right there.
Those guys deserved that.
He walks over, and for those of you listening, he walked over to 2 of his teammates who were laughing. He's like, I hope you're having fun. Ryan just hurt his shoulder. And he literally just stared at him, exit stage left.
That's good.
That's
like dad stuff.
You know what? Screw Brady. My favorite player is Jameis Winston from this point forward.
So those
in the whole world, LeBron and Jameis Winston.
Those were backup offensive linemen, too. So he, just
I love that.
Sticking up for his fellow quarterback. I liked it a lot. So speaking of streaming, I think that this Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight, there's potential for there to be a lot of that going on. Or did you know you can also usually find it on Periscope or Instagram Live if you have someone just holding their phone up to their TV or someone who's
How about
at the fight.
pay for it?
Well, not everybody can cough up $99.
Oh, then you can't watch the fight. How about be legal?
I agree with you.
My generation did legal stuff. Your
please.
generation's crazy people.
No.
Ripping stuff off from a society.
Sorry, we're just so smart that we can figure out how to do that. Maybe if your people would make things a little tougher to get into, it wouldn't be a problem.
Bunch of criminals. That's right. Millennials comes from the word criminals.
It doesn't. No. But Showtime is already declaring war on those people, saying that they will take legal action, and they're also preemptively trying to stop that from happening. I think it's going to happen anyways. And finally, my favorite story of the day. This just came out from Bovada. They have their 2017-2018 NBA MVP odds. So I want you to guess
Durant.
the top 5 in order.
Durant.
Nope.
Harden.
Nope.
Steph.
We're starting with number 1, right?
I'm not going to do it in order.
No, we're doing it in order. Number 1.
Kevin Durant.
No.
Westbrook?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Russell Westbrook.
Not
Why does
that's-
it shock you?
I've already done that. Westbrook scores 100 points and gets a bunch of rebounds.
This is great. I love it. I hope he repeats. This will be great.
Westbrook,
to talk about.
Durant, Kawhi, LeBron, and Harden. It's on the screen.
You cheated.
Well, maybe I'm a millennial.
Oh, okay, that was good.
That
I'm
was a
going to give you
burn.
that. We don't cheat, though.
Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
4 Pro Bowls, Falcons, Eagles, Jets, Steelers. Let's bring on Michael Vick. Yes, Michael Vick, who was just at Kansas City Chiefs camp. You know what? People forget this, Michael, that you were a 4-time Pro Bowler. Absolutely. And you admit, you can pull that mic closer, bud, and you admit, you've come out and say, you know what? I wish my first 4 or 5 years I'd have been a little more locked in. Do you look back now and think, hell, I was good?
Yeah,
I could have been an 8-time Pro Bowler.
I do think there was more that I could have accomplished if I would have put more time into just being in the building more, put more time into study, not always relying on my abilities athletically, and really honing in and being more vocal, being more of a leader. I tend to learn it as I got older, and as I got older, I had more fun doing it. But when you're young, you just kind of going with the flow and,
also,
and working
Michael,
off ability.
You were so capable that in high school and college, you could largely do it on ability.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, maybe your work ethic wasn't what it was because it never needed to be.
Yeah, I got away with a lot.
Of course.
I got away with so much, and I relied on my legs tremendously. But in terms of my arm, I always wanted to ascend as a pocket passer. I always wanted to get better. I watched guys like Donovan McNabb throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game.
Was he your rival?
Absolutely, he was a rival. He was the guy that I had to dethrone.
Really?
Absolutely, to get to the Super Bowl. They always stood in our way.
Philadelphia always,
Eagles,
and you
Andy
looked
Reid.
at him as your like Brady Rogers or Manning Brady. So Donovan was your rival.
Yes, that's correct.
Who was the first coach? Because you just watched Patrick Mahomes with Kansas City. Andy's a terrific coach. Andy Reid's one of the best coaches in my lifetime.
Hands down.
He is. I love Andy.
Hands down.
Who was the first coach that said, Michael, you can't do it with your legs? Who called you out for the first time?
Andy Reid.
Where?
When I first got to Philadelphia.
He called you out.
Bobby Petrino hinted at it. He kind of just threw little hints and tidbits at me in terms of becoming a pocket guy. And in 2007, in the spring, I was learning to become that guy that I wanted to be in terms of playing, from the pocket. But that didn't happen. So when I came to Philadelphia, Andy sat me down and said, listen, you're going to be a disciplined quarterback. You're going to learn the proper footwork. You're going to learn timing. And you're going to put it all together, and you're going to make this thing beautiful at the end of the day. And we did it. I did it. I focused in on, I spent an entire offseason on footwork, focusing on things that I didn't do as well, watched a ton of film on myself.
And you said you started liking watching film.
Absolutely. I learned to break it down. I learned to, find the loopholes in defenses, cover 2 defenses, cover 3s. And even though I knew it, I didn't pay attention to things in terms of how to beat it. And that's what I learned.
Now, Cam Newton, the coaches have said, Carolina coaches have basically said, Cam, you're getting your butt kicked. Your mechanics aren't very good with your feet, which they're not. Your completion percentage is plummeting. And Cam comes out and says, man, you got to let a lion roar. So where do you fall on Cam? How, if you do have natural talent, but he does need to be a better pocket passer, where do you fall on Cam?
Well, I think Cam has to be Cam at the end of the day, but it's a level of precaution that you have to take if you want to play, rough style of quarterback in the National Football League. And Cam has been asked to do a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. And in terms of him staying healthy, he is the focal point for that team. He has to be on the field. That's evident. But he has to take care of himself longevity-wise. And I think Cam is starting to get that. I think people in the building are starting to get it. But it's up to Cam in the moment to really be that guy who can, spare himself.
Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City drafted him. I saw Trubisky. He's a pretty good rollout thrower.
Yeah.
I always liked Deshaun Watson. He's got an it quality. He didn't look overwhelmed. Who was the other young guy that played? Let's see.
Mitch Trubisky.
Mitch Trubisky.
He played.
Deshaun I like. There's one other guy. Kaiser's got a good arm.
Kaiser's got a great arm, good pocket presence.
Okay, so Mahomes I haven't seen a ton of. I've seen a series. They say he's got the world's best arm, right?
Yes.
Let's cut to the chase. Let's not be too nice. Let's be honest about it. He's overwhelmed.
I seen it firsthand.
Come on, Michael.
I seen it
You've
firsthand.
been for 3 weeks
there.
there.
Patrick Mahomes do some things that I wish I could have done with my arm in terms of throwing on the run. And I was one of the best at it, outside of the pocket, being mobile. But this kid can make some throws that is going to shock the world. And I'm so anxious to see him play down the road in the future at some point. Right now he's going through the phases of maturation and learning the system and trying to become a complete quarterback. And he has a ways to go. But this kid is going to do some special things under the realm of Andy Reid.
How far, this is a silly question, but in your peak, because, it was funny with you. When you came into the league, I always said, yeah, Michael's a great runner, but I loved your throwing motion. You threw a tight spiral.
Right.
Like a lot of guys that
Quick release.
Johnny Manziel runs. I didn't like his ball.
Yeah.
Cam's ball I like. Like some guy, you had a beautiful release.
Yeah. Thank you.
And by the way, you're about 6 feet tall. You're not a huge guy.
Yeah.
So when it was all said and done and you were in the pocket, did you get a better high off a great run or a gorgeous deep throw?
A gorgeous deep throw. And even if it was a throw that was just an intermediate throw for a first down on 3rd and 8, and
you like that more than running.
It was tight man-to-man coverage, and I made the right read and went to the right guy.
You love
through
that.
my progressions. That's what makes a quarterback feel efficient. And I always wanted to feel efficient and like knowing that my coaches could rely on me to do the right things with the ball in my hands and not relying on my legs to always get the job done.
Michael Vick joining us, 4-time Pro Bowler, Falcons, Eagles, Jets, Steelers quarterback. And somebody, I've said this when you're not on the air. You gave the greatest speech I've ever seen by a human being without a teleprompter or a press release. It was post-prison, and you came back, and you were so culpable for your mistakes.
Yeah.
And I said on the air that day at my former employer, I said, that's one of the greatest speeches I've ever seen. It was totally from the heart. You were completely authentic.
Thank you.
And I go back and I look at your career, and like with these young guys, when you sit down with Mahomes, what do you tell them about lifestyle and life? Not NFL. How honest are you with them when they ask?
I'm very honest, and it's very rare when I get asked a question, I almost have to bring it up or wait for a moment to surface where I have to kind of chime in and say, back in my day, this is how I approached it, and this is what I think you should do moving forward, Patrick, or Deshaun, when I talked to him a couple months ago at the rookie premiere.
What'd you tell Deshaun?
That, the spotlight is going to be there, but it's up to him to be able to handle it and mature as a young man, a young quarterback in the National Football League, and understand the fact that he's the face of a franchise, and that means a lot.
Michael,
it's a big burden.
You were you got to remember, when you broke into the league, Brady wasn't Brady yet. Right. Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing.
Yeah.
When was the first time you realized you were iconic? I mean, you were
It took a while.
Like, did you go to an airport, a Starbucks? Did you, you're kind of a lay low family dude.
Yeah.
You are. You're kind of a homebody a little bit.
Absolutely.
Was there a moment you were like, holy mackerel, I'm a big deal?
When I went to Japan for a preseason game, and the fans was just going crazy. And I'm like, even internationally, they recognize me. They recognize my face. They want autographs. They asking about my shoes and the clothing line that I had out at the time. And they just wanted to be a part of the Michael Vick experience. And I was like, hey, man, this is pretty cool. I got to live up to this now. It was actually more pressure than anything. So
the other thing, Michael, is, and you talk about this, that you really embrace leadership later.
Yeah.
Like, I always think it's really hard. So I'm Jared Goff, and I'm not very big.
Right.
And I walk into a locker room, and there's Aaron Donald, all these, Quinn.
Veterans and
all these guys, and I'm supposed to be the leader.
Yeah.
Like, when you walk into a locker room, and I'm Patrick Mahomes, and I barely need to shave, is it hard when you were with the Falcons to be like, okay, it's my city, it's my franchise, it's my team?
Yeah, it was tough. I was with Tony Martin, Sean Jefferson, Jamal Anderson.
He was a big
Terrence
deal.
Mathis, Jesse Tuggle. I walked in the locker room, and these were guys that I watched when I was 14, 15 years old, and I'm looking around like I'm actually in the locker room with these guys. And Coach is actually telling me to tell them to not leave the locker room messy or ask for certain things upstairs. And I wasn't equipped for that. I wasn't ready for it. But it was a guy like Sean Jefferson who taught me how to become a quiet leader, lead by example, and then become more vocal down the road as time goes on. And as I had success on the field, proving myself that I could be the guy. And that it's great to have leaders around, man. And I think even for a guy like Patrick Mahomes to have Alex Smith is one of the biggest blessings you can ever have.
Alex Smith is an interesting guy. He doesn't get doesn't get a lot of credit.
Should get more. He's very hardworking and very knowledgeable about the game of football.
You know another thing? Straight line speed. He's pretty fast.
He's quick. He showed it in the preseason game last Friday night.
Yeah.
I mean, 10-yard run on a 3rd and 9. I mean, those are things that can't be accounted for. And those are things that you really have to take into consideration when you're looking at a guy who's had success over the years. You don't want to ruin that.
You know, it's funny. I think Christine and I were talking about this last week. Your wife, she holds you to things.
Yeah,
She's
she
strong
always
woman.
try to hold me accountable.
She's
for
strong woman.
My actions and my words and my decisions.
My wife runs my house.
Yeah.
Who runs your house?
My wife. My wife. It becomes
Good
difficult at times.
Good
but
answer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about what his wife said, but she's a very strong woman, and
Why? We played it on the show.
The whole booty band thing. I thought we got a little.
I ignored that.
Yes. Hey, it's great seeing you again, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Mike Vick. Welcome back. I'm just reading stuff here. Kind of fascinating stuff. Hold on. All right, there we go. Fascinating. Yeah, I'm not very political, I find. I'm very turned off by politics these days. I'm not going to be, I'm just not very, I used to think I was a political animal. This just wears me out. I watched 3 minutes of something yesterday, our president speaking. It just irritated me, and I turned it off. I'm glad you're not political. Who would we vote for president? Goulet will never get my vote, but outside of that, I would consider virtually anyone.
That's rude.
It is kind of rude. I apologize for that. I should be in a great mood today. We've had a great show. Paulie Malignaggi was amazing. I love talking to Michael Vick. Greg Jennings came in studio, and Paulie Malignaggi, I'll probably put him on the podcast. He's the sparring partner for Conor McGregor, who got ticked off that they put this little tiny clip on when he got knocked down, and he's like, I fought you for 12 rounds. You got 10 seconds. So here's Paulie Malignaggi earlier telling us he would absolutely fight Conor after Conor fights Floyd.
If he's respectable, yeah, of course I'll fight him. That's not a problem at all. I think at the end of the day, when two guys don't like each other, especially him, he had the power to not speak about me at all, not put me in the media, and he had the power to make this go away. He's the guy that everybody's paying attention to right now. Instead, he keeps putting up pictures of me on his Instagram. He keeps putting up videos he's editing up on social media and whatnot. So in a way, I think subtly he's trying to keep me relevant in all this. You have 36 minutes of running video, and you can't even put together a 20-second straight concurrently running clip of you dominating the action. And you're going to try to say you dominated 12 rounds. I think it's a little funny. I think it's a little tacky. But like I said, I also think it's a little bit cute because he's trying so hard. He's like the little engine that could. He's demanding attention. Like he really wants to convince everybody that he can do this. If he looks decent, yeah, I'll get in there and kick his ass. But if not, then Floyd will do it next week, and I don't think anybody will want to watch him box again.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. Like, let's just say if it's a boring fight, McGregor will get blamed for that because Floyd's fights are all boring. So if it comes out to be a boring fight, people are going to say, Conor McGregor, come on. All Conor McGregor has to do in this fight is to be reasonably competitive, and it's a big win for him. Nobody expects him to win. Nobody expects him to win. This is one of those like generally in sports, you lose. But there are moments when you're very respectable. You take a big risk. It's almost like in college football. The first 2 or 3 weeks, you play out-of-conference games. And I went to like Eastern Washington University, and they'll play a Pac-12 team every year or every other year. They'll go play like a Oregon or a Washington. When they lose 35-28, it's a win. They get a paycheck, nobody got hurt, and they were viable. There are times in sports when listen, McGregor's taking a big risk here. He's fighting the greatest boxer pound for pound. They're not in an octagon. Ideally not his glove. None of his rules. McGregor just has to be interesting. And if he lands a couple of fights, I mean, his ceiling is very low here. Whereas Mayweather, the one thing Mayweather is saying, I just don't buy. Floyd's like, I tell you what, I'm going to change my fighting style. I'm going to go right. And you said that, Christine, that Floyd said that on the Kimmel show. Like, I'm going to change my fighting style. That's selling tickets. I find that that's like Tom Brady saying before a Super Bowl, I'm going to do the zone read. I'm going to be scrambling everywhere. First of all, that's not what you do. Second of all, you do the other thing really well. And third of all, why in the world would you change? Listen, Floyd is a great fighter. He's not the most interesting fighter. He's maybe pound for pound the greatest fighter I've ever seen. I don't think he's the most interesting. I've said this before. Aaron Rodgers is more interesting than Brady. Brady plays in a very good system and elevates the system. Aaron ad-libs a lot. He's more interesting to watch. Steve Young, to me, was more interesting than Joe Montana. Like Russell Wilson, because he plays in a system but ad-libs, Russell Wilson is more interesting than Matt Ryan. So interesting doesn't always mean better. Conor McGregor fights are way more interesting to me. Floyd's greater. So I think the loss for Conor would be a boring fight. Because then you're like, what promoter's going to be like, listen, you can't box. You could never land a punch. You stayed away. It wasn't very compelling. Why would I pay any money? But, I mean, even if McGregor let's say McGregor decides, I'm just going to go right after him. Let's say McGregor's whole game plan, Christine, is I'm going to win or lose in 3 rounds. I am going to throw wild haymakers. And if Conor landed 3, but ultimately got knocked out, I think a boxing promoter would be like, oh, hell, that was interesting. I'll take him. The loss for Conor is I'm going to box. I'm going to stay away. I'm not. If I was Conor and this was about my career and money, and Conor clearly likes money, I would come in there. I would chase down Conor McGregor, and I would swing for the fence. And if I got tagged and bloodied, you're valiant. That's a courageous way to lose, and it's entertaining as hell. I mean, let's be honest. If you go to this fight or watch it, and it's 3 rounds of haymakers, you'd be way more satisfied than a 12-round fight. Even if you're a McGregor fan, you'd be like, man, went down swinging. All right, goodbye to our researcher, Dustin. He's headed to New York to work with Nick Wright and Chris Carter. So this show will just get dumber by the day.
He's got, oh, no.
Our show starting tomorrow, it will be stupid. It's The Herd.